As mid-20th century philosophers of religion struggled under the pall of logical positivism, which dominated Anglo-American philosophy during the first half of the 20th century, they were forced to defend the very meaningfulness of religious discourse against the attacks of positivists and their philosophical kin. The logical positivists championed a verification principle of meaning. According to the verification principle of meaning, which went through a number of revisions, in order to be meaningful, an informative sentence must be capable, in principle, of being empirically verified. Now, since in the opinion of logical positivists, statements like God exists or God loves the world were not capable of being empirically verified, even in principle, positivistic philosophers held these statements to be literally meaningless. They were just gibberish, meaningless combinations of words that express no proposition at all. Now, this verification principle under criticism went through a number of revisions, including its permutation into the so-called falsification principle, which held that a meaningful sentence had to be, in principle, capable of being empirically falsified. If not verified, at least had to be, in principle, falsifiable. And the fate of religious language was thought to be no brighter under the falsification principle than it was under the verification principle. These verificationist analyses of meaning ran into two insuperable problems. First of all, the verification or falsification principle was simply too restrictive. It was very quickly realized that the application of these principles to ordinary discourse would consign to the trash heap of meaninglessness vast realms of human language. Even scientific statements would be pronounced meaningless in many cases on the basis of the verification or falsification principle. And of course, it was at the altar of science that the logical positivists worshipped, so that it turned out that the verification principle was undoing the very thing that it had been crafted to serve. But secondly, the principle was self-refuting. It was self-refuting. Just ask yourself the following question: is this statement empirically verifiable or falsifiable? In order to be meaningful, an informative sentence must be capable, in principle, of being empirically verified. Is that statement capable of being empirically verified? Well, obviously not. There's no amount of scientific testing that you could do to verify that statement. So by its own criterion, the verification and falsification principles turned out to be meaningless combinations of words. Or at best, they were just arbitrary definitions, just conventional truths, which we are at liberty to reject. And so these sorts of inadequacies of the positivistic theory of meaning led to the complete collapse of logical positivism during the second half of the 20th century, so that Flu's challenge, which once loomed so large in philosophy of religion — I remember being educated in the late 60s and early 70s, how we wrestled with these problems. We read theology and falsification. This was a huge issue in religious language at that time. Now, this issue, which once loomed so large, is scarcely even a blip on the philosophical radar screen.